So, firstly, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. But I guess to start off, where did the love of music start for you, and when did you decide you wanted to compose for film?
Oh, I kind of grew up around music from the time I was could pay attention to anything, and as far as film music goes, again that came kind of early, kind of from the earliest thoughts of
Hmm.
what do I want to be when I grow up. I loved movies, I loved music, so that sounds like a good combination to me. So I just from it's hard to there wasn't any sort of like catalytic event, if that's a word, uh, other than kind of from when I could think about what I wanted to do. This is it. It was movie music.
So, did you have what kind of music did you listen to growing up?
Uh, the generic answer is everything, which really was true. I grew up playing piano and saxophone, and between the two, I played in just about every kind of group and ensemble there was. And so I was exposed both as a performer and as a listener to so many different genres and different styles and different sounds. And as I studied jazz as a saxophonist, and I studied that language and still love it. And then as I got into college, I studied music composition, which is what I got my graduate degree in.
Hmm.
And so it's really just kind of, if it's good music, which is very subjective, but if I like it, I like it,
Right.
regardless of what style or context or genre it is.
Do you have any favorite composers?
Well, sure, but again, it's like I could list uh, every, kind of the same things that just about everybody else would say.
Hmm.
Mostly because I think it's hard to have favorite composers because just about everybody has done something that I really like.
Hmm.
Just like just about everyone has done something that hasn't resonated as well with me.
Right.
Which doesn't make it bad. It just means that it's very hard to say a favorite or two, because there's so much good out there, I
Right.
think.
So I guess, being relatively new to the industry, what was the hardest part about getting to where you are now from when you started?
I it's a hard question to answer, and I think the best way to answer it is the unknown,
Hmm.
because there's not a career path to movie music, to film composer. It's it's not like you go to school and get your degree in movie music, and they have recruiters showing up at campus wanting you to come start at their company in an entry level position, and we'll pay you this much, and here's the benefits involved, and then here's your upward mobility with opportunities for promotions and things like that. It's very much take one step forward into the dark, and you can see around a little bit more. Take another step forward into the dark, and I can see a little, but it's very much the just kind of feeling your way along, trying to make decisions instinctually that feel right.
Hmm.
But I think that's probably the difficult part. Is just there's no way to know what the results of any decision will be,
Right.
and if it's going to lead to where I want it to be as a film composer. And
Hmm.
I've been pretty fortunate to this point that it's going in that direction.
And you've worked with James Newton Howard over the past couple of years. How did you meet him?
I met him. Excuse me. I met him through a friend when after I got my degree in composition. I came out here to USC and did they have a graduate film music program.
Hmm.
It's a 1-year program, and I met a friend of mine who worked over at Hans Zimmer's studio over remote control, and this was shortly after Batman Begins had finished, and this my friend was walking by Hans's studio, who was in talking to James, and he called him in and said, "Hey, James is looking for an assistant. Do you know anybody?" And I had just finished the USC program, and I was trying to find a way to stay in town and hopefully gainfully employed, and just very fortunate to have a man in the right place. And he gave him my name, and I got an interview, and was hired to work for him. And that was, I guess, about 6 years ago, 2005.
Wow.
And I worked full time for him for 3.5, almost 4 years.
So working with him must have been an incredible learning experience. What was the most important thing you learned while working with James?
Yeah, it was. It felt like I was on scholarship, because I was being paid, and I was working very hard. Because he worked so hard,
right,
and requires a team around him who work as hard. But that's really where I learned. I learned a lot through school, learned a lot at USC, and was exposed to a lot. But it's kind of by doing that you learn, and being around kind of the top of the game, as it were, in such a first-hand way, was really, really valuable as far as learning how to get a score from concept to demo to revisions to et cetera, to approval, to prepping for sessions, to the copyists, to the orchestrators, to the stage. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's hard to simulate that sort of thing as a student. You do it to some degree, but never to on the scale and scope of a major project, and with the time constraints involved. So I think that it's hard to say what the most important thing I learned was, because I really learned most of what I know through my experience with him. But I think the other valuable lesson is he makes himself extremely user friendly for the filmmakers. He will always find a way to deliver what they want, even if they don't necessarily know that it's what they want. But he finds a way to make everyone happy, and that's not a skill that everybody has. And so that's something that I'm trying to employ in my own career as well.
So how did so now you did source code and with Duncan Jones. How did you get involved with that project?
I had last year, I believe, finished a movie for Taylor Hackford called Love Ranch, and the editor on that film was Paul Hirsch. And he was a fantastic editor and very well respected. Right. Can basically do whatever he wants. And also the post-production supervisor on that, a woman named Lisa Dennis. Well, they ended up doing source code this year. And it got to be, I guess, November of last year. And I had finished, so I thought, all the work I was going to do in 2010. And my wife was having a baby. And so the November 9th, we're in the hospital. She has a baby. And November 10th, I get a call from Mr. Dennis. Can you come watch the movie tonight? And so, and luckily, Malia, my wife, and the baby were safely in the hospital, and they were both completely asleep. There's nothing I could do anyway. So jumped in the car and drove down to the editing suite and watched the movie, and met with Duncan and Paul and a couple of the producers that night. Paul had given my name as someone who he thought could come in and do the score in a compressed time period. And so it really it came about that way, where Paul said, give this guy a chance, have him come down, watch the movie, let's talk to him. And then after that meeting, that night, they sent me away to write the ending and write the main titles. It wasn't explicitly laid out as an audition, but that's basically what it was, a de facto audition.
Right.
So I went away and wrote about 7 minutes of music and sent it to him a couple of days later, and it was kind of full steam ahead from there.
So how much time did you have to compose for source code?
About 4 weeks.
Wow. So I mean, that's what's the hardest thing when you're working in that type of time crunch? Are you kind of in a panic mode, or you just try to, just kind of, take a deep breath and approach it?
Well, I think there's probably a little bit of both. I think there's a healthy amount of fear that has to be involved
Right.
that motivates you to really focus and not that I would ever consciously do otherwise, but really you'll be focused on doing the best work. But there's not a lot of, in fact, there was no time really for kind of noodling around, for experimenting and for trying things.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of, how about this? All right, we're on the right track, and let's keep going. Usually I would try to write. Usually I would try to write something away from picture, try to write some themes, try to write. But in this case, it was they needed to see stuff to picture right away, and it worked out well because both the scenes that I started on they're kind of the biggest scenes of the movie, especially musically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to draw from those two scenes all the themes for the rest of the movie. But as far as your question of the hardest part of that, it is hard, but at the same time, it's not all that uncommon.
Right. There's always a deadline.
Be on such a tight schedule. And so on one hand, it can be kind of a motivating factor because there's the challenge of, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make the schedule, but also there's that also kind of ticking clock going on in the back of your head of this deadline isn't moving, and so if I don't get this much music done and approved per day or per week or however you want to measure it, we're not going to make that deadline. And so I wouldn't say that's the hardest part of it, but that's the kind of unmoving but constant present nature of the deadline.
Right.
Is probably the scariest thing about it.